We started talking yesterday about how the aura of Purim, the idea of Bilti Gavul Besocha Gavul, the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence specifically within the ordinary, mundane progression of regular events without needing to step outside those events or break those events or change those events with Nisim Nigloim. That idea, that appreciation, the Kabbalah, the reception of that aura on Purim, in order to be fully integrated and fully received, it has to be integrated fully into a person, and that means on all levels of a person's existence, on the levels of action, maisa, on the level of emotion, hargasha, and on the level of intellect, on seichel, which correspond to our spiritual faculties of nefesh, ruach, and neshama. And we spoke about yesterday how Mishlach, Manos, and Matanas Levyonim inculcate and integrate the aura of Purim at the level of nefesh, on the level of action and maisa. We take action by giving Mishlach Manos and giving Matanas Levyonim, and the action creates a concrete thing that the aura of Purim can attach to and integrate into us at the level of nefesh. Today I want to talk a little bit about Seudas Purim and drinking on Purim ad lo yada, and how these mitzvos of the day engage and activate and inculcate the aura of Purim through the faculty of hargasha and emotion and the level of the soul that we call ruach. The ruach is a bridge between the nefesh and the neshama, between the action, the maisa that we take, the body, the physical body itself, which is very coarse, very external, and the neshama, which is the intellect, the moach, the seichel, which is very, very internal, very contained within a person at the deepest levels of their capacity. And emotions, of course, ruach, hargasha, is a mediator between the body and the intellect. We feel our emotions in our body, and our emotions are partly driven by the ideas we have in the way that we interpret things going on around us. Those generate emotions. And so the Ruach operates as a bridge. The lave, the seat of the Ruach, operates as a bridge between the guf, the external guf, the physical avarim of the guf, that through which we interact with the world on a physical level, and the seichel. And one way to activate the Ruach and to activate the emotional engagement with the Or of Purim is through eating a Seudah, through the Seudas Purim, eating food together with people in a Seudas mitzvah. Food, in particular, bridges the divide between physical and spiritual. Food itself is a physical substance, but it's a physical substance that produces very spiritual sensations and activates very spiritual things. Not only is it a physical substance, but it activates taste, and taste is not a physical thing. Taste is a spiritual, it's a non-physical, it's an extra-physical thing. It activates smell, it activates sight. We experience food not only in the physical substance of the food, but we experience food, and foodies can appreciate this in particular probably, but we experience food in terms of how we see the food, how it presents itself to our eyes, the smells that it makes, the sounds that it makes, and that we experience when we eat it, and the tastes that we experience when we taste it. And therefore, food is really using a physical medium to carry and convey spiritual energy, spiritual aura, the nitzotz elokus that's contained within the food. And so food itself is a bridge medium that conveys physical to spiritual and spiritual to physical. And food eaten particularly in a Seudas mitzvah, the Seudas Purim, which is a Seudah that brings people together. It's not just about the physical food, but it's about more intangible elements, more spiritual elements, like gathering with other people, companionship, the Torah that's shared, the experience of being there with other people celebrating the Yom Tov makes the physical experience something more than that. And these are emotional responses, emotional sensations, emotional experiences. They're not intellectual. They're not things that we process in our heads and sort of break down into ideas and concepts and logic. They're not activating the seichel, they activate the lave. They activate the hargasha, the emotional experience of the food, of being there together in a Seudah together. And that is all bringing the Or of Purim into ourselves, inculcating it, integrating it into ourselves through the lave, through the hargasha, through the ruach. Drinking, of course, also is a way of doing this. Drinking, ad lo yada, is a way of blurring the line between intellect and action. Drinking pushes us into a space of hargasha, of emotional feeling, of an emotional experience that transcends logic and transcends our seichel, our cognitive faculties, and also transcends and incapacitates our physical faculties. On the one hand, drinking distorts our seichel, the seat of the neshama within the body. And on the other hand, it also takes away control of our guf, which is the seat in the body of the nefesh. And both of these, the nefesh and the neshama, the guf and the seichel, they're highly structured faculties, right? The nefesh and the guf puts us within the limits of physicality. It's very well defined, it's very migusham, it's very material. And operating at the level of physicality forces us to choose between binaries. We can only act one way at any one time. We have to make a choice. I'm going to turn right, I'm going to turn left. I'm going to raise my right hand, I'm going to raise my left hand. I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. We have to make choices. We're stuck within a very migusham and a very defined and a very gavul defined reality through the guf, through the nefesh. The seichel and the neshama, the mind, the intellect, this puts us within the limits of logic and cognition. And this too is a very, very structured faculty. Right? It's much more pinimi, it's much more internal, it's much less migusham than the body and physical action. But nevertheless, the seichel is still something that is very highly structured, very organized cognitively through logic and the way we cognize things in a very concrete way. Drinking on Purim lowers the structural limits of both of these aspects. It lowers the structural limits of our mind because it distorts our ability to cognize, it distorts our ability to reason, it distorts our ability to engage in bina, in structured thinking, where point A follows from point B, follows from point C, cause and effect, logic, and so on and so forth, where everything has to fit together and make sense. And at the same time, it pushes us into a more liminal space of pure emotion, where we're not thinking in a structured and logical way, in a confined way that's defined by the limits of how we understand logic and seichel to work. Rather, we can simply just experience in an emotional sense through the ruach, through the nefesh, through the ruach, through the hargasha, through the lave. We can just experience things in a much more visceral way, in a much more all-encompassing way. Emotions flow. Emotions are not structured in a particular ways. They flow into each other. They're much more fluid. They're much more all-encompassing. They're much less structured than the seichel. We can experience then much more the bilti gavul, besoch hagavul, and the truth of Baruch Mordechai and Arar Haman, without having to comprehend the difference between them, because they're separate concepts, each with their own space and their own definition. And we don't have to choose between them by choosing in practice what we're going to do. Are we going to do Baruch Mordechai? Are we going to do Arar Haman? We can coexist within those at the same time, where they all fold together into one reality, which is logically impossible, which is physically impossible, but which, operating on the level of emotion, is perfectly reasonable and normal. And that way we can experience the paradoxical Or of Purim, which is the gilui of the bilti gavul, the infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, besoch hagavul, specifically within normal, structured, limited physical reality.